What's going on, my fellow A pluses? It's your boy Adam Perez. We're back once again with a brand new episode today as we're doing a little bit of a movie review for you guys, one that I've been trying to get to for quite some time. It's a film that I started sometime last year. I maybe watched the first 15, 20 minutes of it and I just kept passing out. For some reason, I have this tendency in my old ass age of 40 now to just sit back and decide I'm going to play a movie at midnight. And maybe when I was in my 20s and in my 30s, I can easily pull an all nighter. But once you hit your 40s, man, watching movies late at night just hits different. And this is a movie that I unfortunately just never finished. But one of my followers over on our Facebook page mentioned he got the opportunity to check out this movie and said that he enjoyed it. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm finally going to give this movie a shot. And the movie in question tonight is Hellboy, the Crooked Man. That's right. For those of you who don't know, a brand new Hellboy movie did drop in 2024. It was very much off the radar after the unfortunate debacle that was the David Harbour Hellboy movie that just did not do very well at the box office. I was quite surprised that they decided to go ahead and make another Hellboy movie. They made this movie for about $20 million, maybe a little bit under, according to the budget as well. And they really kept this off the radar, so much, in fact, that this movie did not get an American distribution. It was just played internationally. I think maybe just in the UK or over in London, if I'm not mistaken. But it did not get a domestic release here. When I went to the box office mojo for Hellboy the Crooked Man, it only brought in about $2 million internationally and nothing domestically. I do believe that this movie for a brief period of time was on video on demand, but it is now available for free if you want to check out the new Hellboy entry on Hulu. And that's exactly what I wind up doing. We have ourselves a brand new Hellboy played by Jack Kessie in here, and some new side partners, if you will, from the fantastic Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense. I do believe in this movie they do have a original character named Bobby Joe, played by Adeline Rudolph. In this movie as well. But yeah, man, if you did not know that there was a Hellboy movie out there, there is a brand new one. And if you want to check it out, it is currently on Hulu. So let me go ahead and give you guys my thoughts on this film because believe it or not, I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed this movie. I feel like the first 15 minutes of this film, maybe 10 minutes of this film is a didn't necessarily work for me. And that's probably one of the reasons why I kept passing out, if you will. But I think once I made it past the first 10, 15 minutes, and I really started getting into the story of this movie, it kind of hooked me. I'm not gonna lie. The first 15 or 10 minutes of this movie, I think, is really an adjustment period. You know, when we go from the big blockbuster movies that have, in fact, been Hellboy in the past, helmed by one of the best directors out there in Guillermo del Toro, you know, it is hard to kind of get that mind frame and those expectations of what you think a Hellboy movie should certainly be. But for me, Hellboy the Crooked Man is probably the truest, closest to comic accurate depiction of the character that I can certainly say we've ever gotten. The Hellboy movies with Guillermo is very Hollywood oriented, if you will. And I don't necessarily even know if Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, while I'm sure he appreciates what they have done for his character and put him out there, I don't necessarily know if it's always been the stories that he's wanted to tell or the more intimate stories that he certainly wanted to tell. And this story is definitely intimate in the sense of small smaller settings, much darker. You don't have the shine of Hollywood all over it. And so there is an adjustment period when I watched this movie the first 10 minutes in here. The special effects are certainly not what you would hope when it comes to a big blockbuster Hollywood movie, but when you look at the budget of 20 million, it certainly makes sense. And it felt a little special effects heavy, whether that be the creature that they fight at the beginning, the train coming off of its tracks, and the sort of unbelievable tailspin and turning over and over and over as it tumbles down this hill. Thinking to myself, how does anybody even survive this sort of train crash, if you will? And so the getting you into the mode of this is a smaller Hellboy movie kind of took me a little bit to do. But once it did, it hit. And I think it hit really, really well. The idea of it being much more intimate and being a much more smaller film for me really allowed them to highlight story and depth and really get into a lot of these characters. The fact that we get to see the actor Jefferson White, who plays Tom in here, I was actually quite pleased in regards to how they fleshed him out as a side character and really made him an integral part of the story, giving us flashbacks to his life, understanding how he gets to the point that he is after he winds up sort of coming back home to war. Fitting into this team here of Hellboy along with Joe that I thought worked really well. Joe, for me, even kind of really stood out. The idea of her sort of normally being in the office doing a lot of the paperwork, but is now coming on sort of like a field investigation with Hellboy for one of the first times and kind of being broken in regards to realizing and understanding what it is that Hellboy is doing. And she wants to come along for the ride. And as she comes along for the ride, she herself finds herself kind of going further down into the life of the paranormal and the supernatural and picking up some sort of witchcraft along the way. I thought they even really fleshed out her character extremely well in here too. And so I thought the side characters, the supporting characters, were really compelling enough. And while I probably would have liked to have a little bit more from Jack Kesey as Hellboy, one, I think the character design was flawless. I think he looks great in here. I think Jack Casey, Kesey makes a great Hellboy also. But one aspect that, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a minute since I've seen like the first two Hellboys. I completely like just did not watch the David Harbour one. But this is one of the few times I feel like I remember him learning a little bit more about his mom and connecting with his mother or seeing those emotional ties that he might have with his mom or just like that aspect of his origin story that we don't I feel like doesn't really get talked about enough, right? I mean, you realize that he is sort of like a child from hell, gets discovered by a scientist, but I don't ever recall him, I don't want to say having mommy issues, but really having to deal with that aspect of his life. And so the fact that they wind up tackling him in here, tackling that aspect in here, I found really intriguing. And because of the slow pacing, I thought the dialogue really worked. I think it allowed them to have some incredible storytelling elements and moments. They do this weird thing in here where they break up the movie by sort of chapter. I don't want to say chapters, but it does feel like they give you definitive moments of where the new acts begin as they have titles for each portion that you find yourself kind of going into. And they also do this weird thing too where as you go into the, I don't want to say it's like they have like one aspect you go into the like after the first act it's like a witch's tutorial almost on how to make a witch ball, as this really is heavily involved in regards to witchcraft. You see a couple of witches in here as well, so the fact that they leaned really heavy into that, I thought was really intriguing and an interesting way to kind of tell the story that you want. I really enjoyed the cast in here, man. I really did. Even I think for me, walking out of here, while I really enjoyed everybody, the standout to me was the Reverend. He's like this black preacher that lives in this church, and he's blind. But I really loved his role in here. A little bit bummed in regards to the idea of him not necessarily, spoiler alert, the black guy doesn't make it. I mean, but when it comes to horror films, do they ever, you know what I'm saying? But so I was a little bit bummed in that regards. But and also I gotta say, I thought that the villain in here, the Crooked Man, was pretty formidable. Um terrifying design, despite the fact that he is this old man that barely seems like he can walk. He does have his moments of formidability in here, whether that be playing mind games, really getting into um, the heads of these characters, or even showcasing some of his powers and his abilities in some of the fight sequences that we see in this movie. Also, I think from just a directing and cinematography point of view, I thought it was a brilliant job. They had some moments in here that certainly made me jump. There are great moments in here that when if you're not paying very close attention, you can kind of see the crooked man in the background, or depicting himself as another character, just kind of I don't want to say like um out of focus, kind of standing behind people at times, kind of making weird movements and weird gestures, just really creepy. The lack of lighting, sometimes the perfect amount of lighting, the tone, the pacing, very slow, very deliberate, very methodical, but really getting into sort of those horror vibes that really, really worked for me. A little bit of fantasy here, a little bit of the supernatural and the unknown. And I thought for a Hellboy movie that went for $20 million, I thought it depicted Hellboy like I would read him literally right out of a comic book. It makes perfect sense that Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, also helped write with this screenplay. I believe the director had some involvement also, and a writer by the name of Christopher Golden. So there were three writers attached to this film, but it screamed Mike Mignola to me, and this feels like this is probably one of his better. Like I would have to say, out of all the Hellboy movies, he's probably the most proud of Hellboy, the Crooked Man, and I can completely understand why. Again, this is not a perfect movie. This is not something that I'm certainly writing home about, but in regards to my level of enjoyment, it certainly surprised me a lot more than I certainly thought that it would. And I think the fact that it had a lower budget, that it depended more on the storyline and the characters, and their ability to kind of flesh them out a little bit throughout the entirety of this movie, really certainly worked to its benefit. So, I don't really necessarily remember the soundtrack so well, so maybe I was a little bit bummed about the soundtrack itself. But I really love seeing Joe's growth in here. Same thing with Tom in regards to as he starts to understand the world that he's involved in and starts to believe in the idea of witchcraft, or the idea and ability concept of him might even being a witch at some point, and just seeing how Hellboy kind of navigates this world. I think if anything, I think while the supporting characters really worked for me, I would not have minded a little bit more of a Hellboy presence. I mean, he's always in here, right? But he's not as dominating as like a Ron Perlman with all his quips and I felt like Ron Perlman was always kind of in your face as Hellboy. This guy is very kind of laid back, smoking on his cigar or his cigarettes, saying a couple lines here or there that just kind of hit and connect with you. So I probably would have loved a little bit more Hellboy in this Hellboy the Crooked Man movie. But for the most part, I was really satisfied with it. So look, if you're looking to just be out of plain curiosity what the new Hellboy Crooked Man movie certainly is like, again, go into this movie with low expectations. But I thought some of the things that I saw in here from an action standpoint, it's not heavy action, but there are a couple of great sequences. The church sequence I thought was really brilliant and well handled. The idea of Joe kind of going into the tunnels I thought was really beautifully handled also in the regards to action and the lighting and just keeping you on the edge of your seat. And then just the final battle I thought really kind of worked out for me in here. But look, again, if you want to see a Hellboy movie under $20 million and what they're capable of doing with something a little bit more grounded, check out Hellboy the Crooked Man on Hulu. But until next time, guys, do me a big favor. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.